Imagine a winter night in a remote corner of medieval Europe. Outside, the wind howls endlessly, snow piles up to cover nearly half the door, and the temperature drops to minus 35 degrees Fahrenheit. There is no air conditioning, no modern heating system, no thick down jackets or pocket warmers, only rough wooden walls, a few layers of cheap cloth, and a small hearth in the middle of the house. And yet on some nights, the water in a basin right inside the room still froze into a thin sheet of ice, while the peasants somehow managed to sleep and still had enough strength to get up and work the next morning. The question is, what did they do in a situation that seemed absolutely disadvantageous? This is not only a story of endurance, but a story of technical tricks that sound simple, yet were carefully calculated, turning cheap materials like earth, straw, wood, and smoke into a thermal shield surrounding the entire village. Could the techniques of the ancients have surpassed even modern science in the battle to survive extreme cold? If you're curious how the poorest people of the Middle Ages were still able to make it through harsh winters, stay until the end of this journey to uncover each layer of secrets hidden beneath those low roofs and cracked earthen walls. As we delve deeper into the story, we see that medieval survival did not rely on luck, but on a system of techniques that seemed crude, yet interlocked like layers of defense. Hidden behind those small houses were 5 technical tricks that, at first glance, might look like nothing more than everyday habits. Yet each piece carried its own survival logic, from mixing earth and straw to create heat-retaining walls, to building barriers in the wind's direction, to using the household smoke itself as a natural warming layer, and even harnessing collective body heat along with straw bundles spread across the floor as insulation. All of these formed a technological network that local people passed down through generations, without technical blueprints, yet with astonishing precision. Their power only truly revealed itself when the harshest winters arrived, when each seemingly minor solution became a crucial link that kept the entire community standing firm against the tightening cold day by day. And it is at that moment that we clearly see why these 5 techniques not only survived, but were handed down as irreplaceable secrets of life and death. Amid that harsh winter, we meet Tomas, a farmer as ordinary as any other in the small village tucked inside a wind-swept valley. Tomas is not a lord, not a blacksmith, and certainly not someone versed in technical knowledge. Yet his family unexpectedly becomes the center of a story no one in the village could have predicted. His house, seemingly unremarkable, happens to embody all 5 ancient techniques passed down by their ancestors. Even more surprising, Tomas himself has no idea. He's been living inside such a perfectly formed survival model. One evening, while checking their stock of stored food, Tomas notices something startling. Although snow outside is falling relentlessly and temperatures have plunged into dangerous levels, the inside of the house remains relatively stable and warm compared to the natural conditions. Somehow, the straw layers on the floor and the earth mixture around the walls function as if they were built according to a deliberate principle. It's the moment Tomas realizes that what he thought were mere habits were actually saving his entire family. The twist comes when he visits a neighbor's home and discovers that many families aren't using all those techniques. Some haven't used any at all, and a few households are already struggling. This puts Tomas in a position where he must choose: keep his family's advantage to himself or share it with the whole community. And this moment becomes the turning point of the story. What do you think Tomas will choose? Protect only his own family, or share the knowledge to save the entire village? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective might just open up a new path for this story. When Tomas decides to share what he has observed, the entire village immediately gathers in the largest house to hear his explanation. But what no one expects is that the moment Tomas begins describing each technique, from earthen walls and straw-lined floors to wind barriers, many people start expressing doubt. They insist it is merely Tomas's family's luck, claiming they had done similar things, yet still felt colder than in previous years. That skepticism creates a new layer of tension, and it is also the moment that pushes Tomas to conduct a demonstration on the spot. He asks everyone to place their hands on the earthen wall they believed to be useless. Someone suddenly exclaims that although the wall's surface is cold, it feels stable and doesn't pull heat from the hand as strongly as pure wooden walls. The room stirs. Then comes the second test. Tomas asks everyone to extinguish the hearth for a few minutes to see how quickly the temperature drops. Something strange happens. The large house, which has straw lining the floor, retains warmth far longer than anyone expected. That moment unfolds like a dramatic shift, silencing even the skeptics. From confusion, they move to astonishment, and finally to trust. The entire village begins to see the 5 ancient techniques in a completely different light. Not as scattered tricks, but as a finely coordinated system. And that becomes the crucial stepping stone before harsher trials quietly waiting ahead, where each technique will be pushed to its true limits. When the whole village begins to trust the ancient technical system, Tomas proposes the next step, reinforcing the entire settlement according to the main wind direction. This is when the wind-blocking technique, seemingly simple yet highly strategic, is applied, collectively for the first time. The villagers erect additional wooden fences, arrange shrubs into long rows, and even drag out old planks to form a wind corridor encircling the cluster of homes. At that moment, everyone believes they've found the optimal solution. And indeed, on the first day, the results are so striking that people can't hide their excitement. The wind is diverted, indoor heat loss decreases, and the children stop shivering. Someone even jokes that this year's winter will be the easiest one yet. But that very sense of relief opens the door to an unexpected turning point. By the second morning, Tomas notices that the wind's behavior has changed. The direction is no longer what it had been in previous winters. It has shifted to a completely different angle, rendering their newly built wind barriers almost useless. Some areas are even being hit harder as the redirected gusts accumulate. The entire village is bewildered. They have never seen the winds change so abruptly. This is the moment everyone realizes. The ancient techniques work, but nature never follows a fixed pattern. And this unpredictable shift is what drags the community into a new series of harsher trials, where adaptability becomes just as vital as any technique they possess. A blizzard begins to form without any of the familiar signs the villagers once relied on. That afternoon, the sky suddenly turns a dense shade of gray, as if covered by a heavy veil, and the cold descends so quickly that within just a few breaths, everyone feels the temperature drop by what seems like dozens of degrees. The newly built wind barriers, which had seemed sturdy, are buried within hours under swirling waves of snow. The wind no longer blows from any clear direction. It shifts constantly, as if guided by some inexplicable force, an occurrence the village elders call lost wind, a rare phenomenon that brings chaos whenever it appears. Within a single night, drinking water in the storage jars freezes into a layer so hard it takes real force to break. Food hanging in the rafters grows so cold it stiffens, losing nearly all of its natural softness. The techniques the entire village had relied on, from heat-retaining earthen walls and insulated straw floors to the wind deflection system, are pushed to their limits. Even Thomas's home, once the warmest in the village, begins losing heat faster than usual. The villagers don't panic, but the silence settling over the settlement is enough to show that things have reached a new threshold. This is no longer the familiar winter. They are facing a kind of trial sent by nature itself, as if it intends to test every layer of technique they've been depending on. In such a situation, what do you think their next step should be? Continue relying on their old methods, or seek an entirely different approach? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective might align with the choice Thomas ultimately makes. Amid the village's struggle to find answers for the unusual cold, Thomas remembers a technique long considered cumbersome: letting smoke linger inside the house before escaping through the roof. When the fire is stoked larger and the smoke vent is left uncovered, a thin haze begins to drift through the room, settling along the ceiling like a light gray veil. Strangely enough, after only a short while, the biting chill in the air eases noticeably, as if the smoke is creating an invisible cushion between the cold and the people inside. At first, many are skeptical, unaccustomed to the idea of living with smoke, but they soon notice something striking. Even as the winds outside shift unpredictably, the indoor temperature remains relatively stable. Not only that, items hung from the rafters and dried goods placed near the roof begin to warm and dry more quickly, as though the smoke is shielding them from the quiet assault of frost. The effect astonishes the entire village. No one had imagined that a technique so simple and dismissed for so long would become their savior in the most critical moment. However, the trade-off is that the air inside becomes slightly stifling, forcing everyone to carefully adjust the amount of smoke so it warms the house but still allows comfortable breathing. It becomes a new challenge, more delicate, requiring constant observation. Even so, both Thomas and the villagers sense that they've just activated an ancient shield whose power they themselves had never fully understood. The next climax is waiting ahead, and the true potential of this smoke layer is only beginning to reveal itself. As the layer of smoke inside the homes begins to stabilize, Thomas notices a new challenge emerging. Although the air is no longer painfully cold, people's strength is fading quickly because they must stay awake through the night to tend the fire. He proposes a bold solution rooted in an old, familiar technique. Gather the entire village into one large house to share heat. It's not just the warmth from the hearth. Human body heat itself will become a shared energy source, the very method their ancestors once relied on during the harshest winters. When everyone slowly gathers together, something unexpected happens. The space becomes significantly warmer in a remarkably short time, as if the room itself is coming alive with the presence of dozens of people. Children feel more comfortable, adults loosen their tension, and the sense of isolation brought on by the cold dissipates. This is not only a technique for retaining heat, it is a technique for retaining spirit. Yet in the midst of that revived hope, a faint sound, like wood cracking, echoes from the ceiling beam. At first, no one pays attention, but minutes later, a second crack follows, louder and sharper. The house, never designed to hold this many people, is beginning to strain under the weight. The warmth they've just regained tightens, suddenly like a drawn bowstring, signaling that the next trial is approaching far sooner than they imagined. When the large house begins to creak under the strain, Tomas immediately turns to the final technique, laying a thick layer of straw across the floor and packing additional straw into the wall, gaps to stabilize the structure and retain heat. At first glance, it seems like a simple action, but to the villagers, it looks as though Thomas is revealing some kind of inherited family secret that no one else truly knows how to perform. A few even joke, half teasing, half impressed, that Tomas is becoming the winter guide, giving the room an atmosphere that is both tense and sprinkled with playful envy, the kind of drama every small community inevitably has. But then, something unexpected happens. As everyone moves the last bundles of straw, a tiny spark pops out from the hearth and lands on the floor. The entire room holds its breath. All eyes fix on that tiny glowing speck, as though a single wrong movement might make the entire system collapse. But the shocking part is, nothing happens. The spark dies instantly, as if smothered by something invisible. Just seconds later, Tomas realizes what no one else has noticed. The layer of accumulated smoke from the earlier smoke technique has lightly moistened the straw, just enough to prevent it from catching fire, yet still allowing it to function as insulation. A perfect paradox. An old trick, once dismissed as outdated, has suddenly become their primary shield. That moment feels like a subtle flex from medieval engineering itself. Simple, unglamorous, yet so effective it forces even modern assumptions to take a step back. And right then, the villagers understand that they are standing at a turning point, where what they know will determine how this winter story ends. As the blizzard gradually retreats and warmth begins to seep back into every home, the entire village gathers, not to celebrate, but to truly reflect on what they've just endured. And this is the gentle hook you want the audience to feel. A small community, with no modern tools, has just overcome a winter that many other places struggled to survive. It makes everyone ask the same question. How could such seemingly simple techniques create such enormous strength? In that moment, Tomas is no longer the accidental leader. He becomes a symbol of observation, connection, and trust in the values passed down through generations. The 5 ancient techniques, earthen walls, wind barriers, smoke layering, shared heat, and straw insulation, suddenly stand out as a structured, principled, and remarkably clever system, one sophisticated enough to make even modern thinkers pause. The greatest lesson here isn't about the cold. It's about how humans face hardship. When challenges seem beyond our abilities, it's often the simplest solutions that become the strongest foundations. And sometimes the things we label as outdated hold a timeless wisdom, waiting for the right moment to reveal their worth. If you've watched until this point, I'm sure you've felt the subtle depth of this story. So what do you think is the smartest technique or the most important lesson we can carry into our modern lives? Share your thoughts in the comments. your perspective might inspire new directions for future videos. And if you want to keep exploring fascinating ancient techniques like these, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next journey.